Paint My Campers Part 1. This is part 1 of my renovations. I have been living in this camper for 4 years now. And when I first bought it, I did buy it brand new. So I really didn't need to do anything when I first moved into it 4 years ago. But when I lived in it, since I've been living in it for some time now, I really wanted it to be my own, make it more homey, make it feel more spacious, liven it up a little bit. So I'm going to start painting this slide out. I just want to paint this one right here for now, just to see if it will come together in my mind like I want it to. So what I'm looking for is to make it brighter and make it feel more spacious. So there's a lot of prep work that I had to do. I had to remove these recliners here. They were quite heavy to move once I unscrewed them. But since I am living in the camper full time and I have my dogs in here, I had to get fancy with where to put these. Obviously, I can't have them in the area as to where I'm going to be painting. So I just kind of moved them out in front of my island and kind of made a little barrier so the dogs couldn't get to where I'm going to be painting. Obviously, I needed to sweep and vacuum because I do have 3 dogs. They do shed quite a lot, and I wanted to make sure that no little dog hairs ended up in my paint or on my walls while I painted. Again, before I could start painting, I had to do some patchwork, patch drywall work. So what I did is I got this patch repair kit from Lowe's. It's a little tub that comes with like a pink putty, and you put it on the holes that you want to cover up, and it dries white, and then you just go back and sand it in. Around my windows, I had curtain valances, and I needed to take out those valances, cover up the holes, sand them down, and even with those removed, the curtains and the curtain balances, the space felt so much bigger already, and I was so happy with it. So I think that the paint is really going to add another layer of making it feel bigger, making it feel homey. So before I could even start painting, I had to do more prep work. I had to vacuum where I sanded down those little holes so that, again, dust and dirt wouldn't get into the paint that I had and just wouldn't make the paint look blech. So before I could even start painting again, I had to do some TSP on these walls. TSP, I guess, is a degreaser. It's supposed to help the primer and the paint adhere better to the walls. I went ahead and did that, and I can say that the amount of dirt that came off of these walls, I was astounded by. Now, in this living room slide out area, this is the dog's area where I put their dog toys, their dog food, their dog bed, and then obviously I have the 2 recliners here on this wall. So it was quite dirty. I'm gonna have to be mindful of pushing up their dog beds against the wall because once I paint, I don't want to have, black marks on my walls, on my freshly painted walls, because then that'll look horrible. So once I finished the walls, I went ahead and wiped down the ceiling because I wanted to paint the ceiling as well. You can't just have the walls painted without the ceiling. That would have just looked crazy in my opinion. So I wanted to paint this trim also. So I went ahead and wiped that down as well. And I taped off the light fixtures. Now, before you guys come for me in these comments, which I'm a rookie, I have not painted something like this before. So I probably made the rookie mistake of not taping off my windows, but I didn't do that. But I did make a barrier between me and the living room area so that the dogs wouldn't get in my way while I was painting, and I wouldn't have to worry about them, being nosy and wanting to know what was going on because they couldn't see me. Now, obviously, I thought this plastic would go all the way down to the floor. It did not. It stopped about mid-level, so I just taped it to my recliners where I made the barrier so that the dogs couldn't get back there. And here I am just getting ready to paint. Now, I probably should have taped off my floor because I did redo these floors a couple of weeks ago, and another rookie mistake that I made is not putting down something on these floors. And another rookie mistake that I made also was not putting down like a plastic bag underneath my paint can as soon as I poured that first paint, because obviously it dripped down the sides of the paint can, and I may have gotten a little bit of paint on the floor, but for the most part, everything is cleaned. I'm ready to paint. So the paint that I used, or the supplies that I used, were, I went to Lowe's. It's a Lowe's brand of paint. It's called Valspar Ultra, and the color is an ultra white. So it's very bright white. I also used a Purdy roller and then a Purdy paintbrush. Now, one thing that I did learn in my research was Purdy paintbrushes are reusable. You just have to wash them off at the end of the day after you finish painting, and you can reuse it. Just make sure you use soap and water, and you just make sure you dry it upright so that it can allow the water to slide down and out of the paint. Now, I don't know if holding the paintbrush upright while it dries is like really a thing, but that's what I heard, and that's what I did in my painting that I used. Now, again, before you guys come for me, I know I made another rookie mistake. I went in different directions of painting. I went up and down, side to side, diagonal, which I was told, no, you did it wrong. You need to go in one direction the entire way to have smooth, full coverage. I didn't have smooth and full coverage the first two coats that I put on this wall and the ceiling. So I think I probably did like 3 coats in total, which, again, another rookie mistake, but I wanted to have a full coverage. Now, the roller is not going to get around this trim as I want it, as a close paint as I want it. So I will go back around with my little paintbrush to go around the trim, to go around these light fixtures, and just to do some touch ups. Now, I'm thinking of replacing this light fixture that you guys see here. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Did you guys change yours? Do you have suggestions? Drop a comment in my chat because I'm really interested to see what you guys did. If you have photos, I have been doing my research on replacing the electrical. I know I need to go back with a 12-volt light bulb or light fixture. So I am interested to see if you guys have replaced it yourselves or if you hired somebody. I know I could probably do it myself, but I'm just looking for like the right kind of light fixture that would really fit with what I want to go in that area. Or I can also paint that light fixture black, which I think the black and the white would make it pop. So here I am just taking my little purdy brush and I'm going around the windowsill. I did get paint. I did get paint on my trim as well as my floor. Now, another rookie mistake. I'm owning it now because why not? I probably should have put something down on these floors. I did these floors a couple of weeks ago. I will show you guys my before and after photos of that and my little video of that as well. I was really happy with how it came out. However, I didn't do enough research when I was doing those floors, so I more than likely will be tearing up these floors again and doing them all over again. So a little bit of paint on these floors never hurt anybody at all. I'm just going to redo them a little bit because they need a little bit of touch up and a little bit of TLC, and I think I'm going to go in a different direction. Um, so I did get paint on my quarter round also, but my quarter round is white, so it is okay. I will go back through and I will paint that quarter round to have that same white flat finish that I did. Also, for this paint that I used, it is an eggshell finish, so it's like in between the flat and the semi-gloss. It's not glossy like the semi-gloss, but it's not flat. It's not like a flat color. So it's kind of like, to me it looks like a matte finish um, on this wall. But as you guys can see, I probably spent like 3 hours just painting, letting it dry, painting, letting it dry, painting. I did walk around with a flashlight because I did notice some hollow spots or some dead spots. I don't really know what the correct terminology is, but I did notice some spots where I could still see the brown peeking through underneath the paint, and that was after 2 coats of paint. So I spent a lot of time painting this one slide out area, but I would rather have more time spent on it than not enough time. And in that time, I also got more paint on the floor. I got paint on myself, and I'm a little tall, so I had to keep bending my head to the side just so that I didn't get paint in my hair, which ultimately I ended up doing. I don't know. I probably should have wore a hat or a Tyvek suit in order to protect my hair and protect my scrunchie that I had. But here I am just painting it. So you guys can see that the space already looks bigger. Like it looks wider, it looks deeper. I'm really happy with how it's coming out. There's good contrast against that green, that lime green wall, which you can barely see there, but it's good contrast against it. Um, I just wanted to take my time painting this because, again, these recliners are pretty heavy to move, and I didn't want to have to move them again and paint again, move them again, and then paint again, move again, paint again, move again, paint again. So I took some time to just sit down, paint around the trim, get some paint on the trim, and I really just painted this whole slide out with a little bit of TLC, some elbow grease, and some music. I painted this slide out a couple weeks ago. I was in Texas for some time, and it was like one day that it was an absolutely gorgeous day. And so I have the windows open, um, I have the music going, and I'm just painting. Um, my neighbors are probably looking at me like, what is she doing now? Because I'm always doing something in this camper, you guys. If you live in a camper, you guys are always doing something. What have you guys done to remodel your camper? I would love to see videos. I would love to see photos of it. I think that we live in a unique space that we can really change things up no matter where you're going. If you want to add like little knickknacks to it, which is another thing that I did trying to add to this camper before I started to just paint. So again, like I said before, I've been living in this camper for 4 years. I was talking to my therapist on multiple sessions of like I wanted it to feel more homey and I wanted it to feel more spacious for me and the dogs because I was looking at getting a bigger camper because this one I felt like I had outgrown it, but in the reality of things and taking a step back and looking at it, I just realized that it may have just needed a little bit of a touch up and just a little bit of more of me and what makes me love this camper that I fell in love with. That once I walked into, I absolutely fell in love with this camper. I loved that it had a desk in there. I loved that it had enough space for the one dog that I had. I just absolutely love this camper. So I just wanted to do a facelift, and that was one of the things that my therapist really helped me to see is she just suggested like have the confidence to go ahead and do it, and if you don't like it, you can just paint over it a different color. So I just wanted to paint this one slide out. I did end up painting the trim above the slide out. White, and it came out really well. So obviously, as I was going through the day, because it took me 3 hours to paint, let it dry, paint, let it dry, paint, let it dry, I started to get more ideas of what I could add here and do here. So I really like how the trim came out. Obviously, you can see the brush strokes. I had to do another coat on that one. But for the most part here, I am just going to let everything dry for a minute because it's still wet. I painted the trim, I painted the ceiling, I painted the wall, but look how much bigger this area already seems like, you guys. It feels bigger in it. It makes me smile so wide that I just can't even contain myself. You probably hear me smiling in this audio right now. Um, but I just let it dry a little bit because I didn't want to do another coat of paint on there without giving it some time. So I'm just gonna put some more paint in the paint tin so that I can do another coat on here. And at this point, this is where I'm starting to see those hollow points or hollow spots. Again, I don't really know that's the correct terminology. I'm using the hollow spots, meaning spots where I could still see the color from the wall peeking through the paint. Again, I did do a 2-in-1. So I did a primer and a paint together, which from my research, I should have done 2 coats anyway. First coat is the primer to just get the color on the wall. Second coat is to make sure that there's no spots peeking through. And unfortunately, since I'm not a professional painter, I did 3 coats because even with the second coat, I could still see large areas of the color that was initially on the wall peeking through once I did the second coat. So I went ahead and did a second coat, and I probably did like 3.5 coats of paint on here. I know I did 2, but I probably did 3.5 coats of paint just because I took my little paintbrush and I went back on the wall and I filled some more spots in. I just wanted it to be full coverage. I'm not a perfectionist, but I think when you're painting something like this, your home, I think you have to be somewhat of a perfectionist to make sure that it's exactly how you want it, no matter how long it takes you, how much paint it takes you. I started out with a gallon of paint here, and I ended up using probably half a gallon on just this slide out alone. Um, yeah, so I probably used I probably did like 3.5 coats of paint on this one slide out. And I know you guys are probably going to say, well, you don't need to really worry about the area behind the chairs. It's chairs, they're going to cover it. But I wanted full coverage. I didn't want any peekaboo spots peeking through and showing that I didn't finish a job. I like to have a complete job done. So that is what I went ahead and did. So here I am just going back through again with the roller. And again, I had to duck my head because my head was touching the ceiling and paint was getting in my hair. So I just went back through with the roller and I rolled the ceiling again. And I had to trim those trim pieces were kind of tricky to get, and I was getting a little frustrated with them because they weren't doing what I wanted it to do by holding the paint in the area. So, obviously, again, I'm thinking of replacing this light fixture here. Let me know your guys' thoughts on it because I'm interested to see what other people did, what other suggestions are out there. I have been looking at a few items, so we'll just have to wait and see if I decide to change it or what color I decide to paint it. If I don't change it, I will paint it black. That is a promise because I am doing, I think white and black on this ceiling would be perfect. So here I am done for the day with the roller. I'm going to go back through around the window sills and just get this trim and just make sure that there's no spots that I may have missed. Again, underneath the window, around the window, on the floor, in the corners. There's a lot of places. I wanted to make sure I got a close finish around the electrical fixtures. And so this is what it looked like. Obviously, I did get some on the floor. This is my paint that I used. It was that Valspar Ultra. And now I just need to clean up for the day. It took me about 3 hours to paint this area, but I was really excited. So here I am just looking at the damage done. I got paint everywhere on my hands, on my clothes. These are my favorite pants, but um, I'm happy with the full coverage. I'm happy that I took the leap and painted. Obviously, I have a little buddy here, my youngest dog, Theodore. My youngest dog, Theodore, he wanted to come and see what I was doing. And then I just needed to clean up around the trim because, again, I did get paint on the floor and I did get paint on the trim. Paint on the trim came off like a pro. It was just a little elbow grease and some warm water. Paint on the floor, oh, I didn't really get all of that off. So I think I'm going to be replacing these floors anyway. But if I don't, there is a rug that goes over this area. Um, and I have my buddy here, Theodore. He's coming to support me and see what was done. Um, I definitely needed to make sure that the rollers stayed, wet because I will be using them again probably tomorrow. And this is just me with a job I'm happy with. I picked up Theodore. We celebrated a little bit. He got to look outside. Peyton came over and looked outside. I'm just looking at my neighbors before I continue to clean up. So now that the paint is done, obviously I can't put everything back because it is still wet, but I needed to make some room for the end of the day and to give some room for my dog. So I just needed to move everything that was on that slide out initially back on that slide out, not necessarily putting it back in place, but I just needed to put it back on the slide out so that the dogs have more room to walk. And since I am done painting for the rest of the day, I wanted to make sure I got everything out of my way so that I can get the dogs settled down. This is all the stuff I have to put back on that slide out. So with the light turned on, how do you guys think I did? Did it come out good? Did it, do you guys like it? I just wanted to put my makeshift blinds up because I don't have my blinds put up back up yet because obviously they go screwed into the wall. The paint is still wet, so I cannot put anything on those walls until they are fully dried. So I just made some makeshift curtains and I kind of just put them up in the window because it is starting to get dark and I didn't want the neighbors looking in on me. And so now I just need to get my dogs resettled. But let me know how I did in the comments, you guys. Stay tuned for part 2 of my renovation. Thanks. Good night.